and bloody history of warfare is marked by astonishing episodes. Perhaps the most fascinating tale of all is one that happened here in Spain over 800 years ago. An army rode confidently into battle, led by a general on horseback who had been dead for over a week. The macabre and yet inspiring story of the heroic corpse will be the first stop on our journey into the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. Trek across Australia behind the wheel of an experimental vehicle powered by the sun. Take a sip from an unusual cup with a pair of newlyweds in France. Test your survival skills with volunteers who lived for a year as their ancient ancestors did. Go to a month-long party in Ireland with husband hunters and bachelors in search of a mate. Hoist a huge fan on a New England island to harness the power of the wind. Brave sub-zero temperatures to hunt with Eskimos in search of a meal. Go for a dizzying ride down the granite nose of Abraham Lincoln. Share a ritual dunking in India to celebrate the repetition of a couple's marriage vows. Zip along the open road in a car that runs on the wind. The strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. These are the kinds of subjects a man named Robert L. Ripley challenged us to. Believe it or not. The Spanish countryside is peaceful now. But in the Middle Ages, virtually all of Spain was a battlefield. Christian and Muslim rulers had divided the land into dozens of small kingdoms and fought viciously to enlarge their realms. Warfare was constant, bitter, and bloody. From out of the tumult of such hand-to-hand combat, a new leader emerged. His name and his memory are honored still. This monument in Burgos, Spain, commemorates the greatest general of that time. The man so successful and so respected, he quickly became known as the Lord Champion. El Cid Campeador, El Cid. He was born here, and his body now lies in the Burgos Cathedral next to his wife in the place of highest honor, in front of the altar. Faith in El Cid, trust in his leadership and his word could work near miracles. This chest commemorates that faith. Once, desperately needing cash in order to keep an army in the field, he sent that chest to his moneylenders. He assured them it contained all that was needed as security for a loan. In return, they sent him, without question, a small fortune. In time, El Cid was able to repay the loan. The chest was returned, its contents intact. The contents 100% pure sand. As in this replica, El Cid's word had been enough to save the day. As El Cid's reputation grew, his troops became convinced he was invincible. Portrayed here by Charlton Heston, he was a general who never lost a major battle. For this final campaign, he made most unusual arrangements. In the year 1099, El Cid called his wife and his closest advisors to him and made a startling announcement. Though he seemed in good health, he said he would soon die, and that shortly thereafter, a great enemy army would appear at the gates of the city. But the people were not to fear, for death would not deprive them of their leader. He sent for rare spices, put them in a golden cup, mix them with rose water. This was not a medicine, but a potion to preserve his body after death. Following his instructions, his death was kept secret from all but his wife and his closest aides. Secrecy was essential to the success of his plan. An enemy soon launched an attack on the city, just as El Cid predicted. Behind the ramparts, unaware that their general was dead, El Cid's troops waited for him to lead them into battle. Gripping a banner in his lifeless hand, El Cid would conquer death to lead a final victory. Mounted on his well-trained battle horse, the corpse of El Cid would inspire courage and confidence in his army and strike fear into the hearts of his enemy. Not because he was dead, but because both sides believed he was alive. Invincible even in death, El Cid routed the enemy and drove them into the sea. El Cid's victory that day, one of the most bizarre in all military history, was great and complete. The city was saved. This is the mighty forearm that El Cid once raised in battle. It is preserved here in the office of the mayor of Burgos to honor that day when a general crushed his enemies and saved his people, 13 days after his death. Believe it or not.
Out here in Stallion Springs, California, when this was a wilderness, a man had to learn how to take care of himself. Sometimes without much more than his own two hands. But that was enough. To survive, our ancient ancestors were reduced to the absolute minimum. Their bare hands and their ability to think, to understand that any object can become a tool or a weapon. And in the hands of man, that was and is enough to survive when all that counts is survival itself.
For the Netsilik Eskimos who roam the ice of Canada's northern frontier, carving snow and ice into an instant home is a technique handed down from generation to generation to survive winters that drive temperatures down to 30 degrees below zero. To feed their families, the Netsilik depend on their skills as hunters. Moving out together across the frozen landscape, the men seek a likely hunting area. Then, accompanied only by their dogs, they proceed alone. The object of their search is totally invisible, lurking in the water beneath the ice. The dogs, however, will be able to sniff the presence of the prey. Somewhere beneath the snow, there is a break in the ice, an open hole where seals come to breathe. The surface snow, however, cannot be removed for fear of frightening away the prey. A small hole penetrating to the water below, coupled with a hair-like filament torn from a bit of swan's down, will provide the hunter with the only evidence that a seal is beneath the snow. Mounted on a piece of animal sinew, the filament is all but invisible. If a seal comes to breathe, the filament will move. Then, with a barbed point on his spear, the hunter will strike at his hidden prey. Until then, he must wait. Silently, patiently, in below freezing weather. The prey is hooked. Now the hunter must dig through the snow to haul up his catch. It is hard, strenuous, and dangerous work. The seal is heavy. The footing is slippery. But failure is unthinkable. Soon, the other, less fortunate hunters arrive to share the bounty. By developing such specialized survival skills, the Netsilik have transformed a hostile environment into a familiar home. In England, an ancient village was created to provide a hostile environment. It was a unique experiment to determine if modern man could survive without any modern conveniences. No telephone, no television, no running water. The primitive tribal conditions match those that existed 2,000 years ago. Provided with basic tools, simple training, seeds, and livestock, ordinary people were challenged to survive for 1 full year. Volunteers included a construction worker and his wife, a farmer whose wife was a former hairdresser, and their children. A doctor and his wife, a registered nurse. A pair of young social workers from a major urban center. Another couple recently graduated from college. And a young school teacher and her boyfriend. In such isolation, with no outside assistance, they would succeed or fail together. One early challenge was as vital as it was basic. Making fire with simple wooden tools.
Hey, there we go. Excellent.
With the ability to make and control fire, the villagers were able to graduate to the next level of primitive development. Just as their ancestors may have done some 2,000 years before them, they created a crude forge, added iron ore, and kept the fire alive with a steady flow of air pumped through a bellows made of a goat skin.
The whole smelting process takes quite a long time. We have to bellow for about 5 hours, and it's fairly hard work, so we do it in shifts of about half or 3/4 of an hour each.
To keep the furnace as hot as possible, the bellows had to be manned continuously. Otherwise, the ore would not melt. Using similar tools, ancient man harnessed the power of fire, and with the same result.
I think this nib's probably going to break when we take it off.
In such a glowing lump as this, the Iron Age was born. For the modern primitives, the creation and shaping of metal was a proud achievement.
We've been making some tools. We've made some knives. This one here, for example, and it's quite a good job, really. I think we can make anything we need now.
The handmade knives were soon put to good use, and with the new tools came new techniques. The skinning out of animals slaughtered for food became easier. In many other ways, the volunteers adjusted to the slower pace of ancient life. The laundry was boiled by using hot stones. To keep their hair clean, they used mud as a primitive but effective shampoo. In the harvesting of their crops, the villagers reaffirmed the ancient rhythms of their Iron Age ancestors. Their labor was dictated by the turn of the seasons. Each day's assignment was determined by the simple need to earn their daily bread. To transform enough grain into flour to feed themselves for only one day, a heavy stone mill had to be turned by hand for over 3 hours. The bread, made from the stone ground flour, provided a double satisfaction. Not only did they grow the grain themselves, they also created the oven to put it in and the fire to bake it. With such simple accomplishments, the volunteers proved they could endure.
Well, when we first started off, I thought, well, how on earth could you live at all without some of the things that you have in the modern world? And yet I'm coming more and more to think that it is possible, that you can live quite comfortably. And so that's nice to know.
After a year, the experiment was over. The test confirmed that modern man could survive without modern conveniences. Believe it or not. To survive a shipwreck in 1974, a determined woman clung to the backs of 2 giant sea-going turtles. Believe it or not.
Any man or woman can grow up to be president and perhaps be memorialized here, as George Washington has been. The Washington Monument took 37 years to build. It's the tallest masonry structure in the world and measures in at approximately 555 feet. Back in 1934, the powers that be decided to erect a scaffolding around the monument to give it a good cleaning. At the very top, for a finishing touch, were 8 platinum-tipped rods as lightning conductors. Very attractive, very valuable, and very tempting. So one night, while the scaffolding was still up, a thief took advantage of the opportunity. When the sun came up the next morning, the monument was missing its platinum crown. But once gone, the authorities decided it wasn't worth the trouble to replace them. Our capital is full of such surprises. Information that probably would be news even to the people who live here. Among the occupants of these impressive government buildings, for example, few are probably aware of how certain funds end up here at the Treasury Department. They are collected across the street by Treasury Department employees in a most unusual way. Every morning, a mailbag is picked up containing monies that are voluntarily given back to the government through a sense of patriotism, fear, or just old-fashioned guilt. The Conscience Fund was established in 1811 to accept an anonymous donation of $5 from a person claiming to have defrauded the government. Since that time, millions of dollars have flowed back to the government for a variety of reasons. But most of the time, it's simply a matter of a burdened conscience. For example, this afternoon, I found the enclosed coin on the pavement. I am unable to determine who the owner is. Or, please accept this money enclosed for 2 postal stamps I reused. Or, This check for $3,100 is to make restitution of tools, leave days, and other things I stole while I was in the Navy from '62 to '67. Please accept this check for $1,000 so my conscience will never haunt me again. Perhaps the most noteworthy contribution of all was a sum of $139,000, sent anonymously. Lurking behind the lush foliage that protects the historic homes of suburban Washington from prying eyes, there are other equally unpublicized surprises. This house was once called home by President James Monroe. Like many presidents before and since, he enjoyed having a place in the country to retire to think about the affairs of state. In this room, he developed the Monroe Doctrine. But when President Monroe was supervising the construction of this house, he didn't know something that would tend to put politics in its proper perspective. The floor of one of the porches in this house is built out of limestone and shale, hauled in from a quarry right here on the property. Practical and attractive, and more than somewhat unusual. For embedded here are the footprints of the original inhabitants of the region. These are dinosaur tracks. Prints like these are extremely rare. They are found in only one other place east of the Mississippi. And over here is a print of a dinosaur tail. There's even an impression of a dinosaur hide. All left here over 200 million years ago when Washington was a swamp. Perhaps President Monroe would have reflected that the real movers and shakers of Washington once had big feet, small brains, and a tendency to stand in the mud. Occupying the highest ground in the center of Washington, the Capitol is such a familiar landmark that many overlook some of its more fascinating treasures. You might, while strolling through the rotunda of the Capitol, give the sculpture over there just a passing glance and move on. But it's worth taking just a moment of your time. The creation of Gutzen Borglum. It was bequeathed to the nation back in 1908. Borglum, the son of Danish pioneers, was born in Idaho and was obsessed with creating massive sculptures of major figures of American history. He spent months studying photographs of Lincoln, reading his letters and speeches before attempting to carve his likeness in 6 tons of marble. He came to the conclusion that Lincoln's face had a happy side, the right, and a sad side, the left. And this is what he attempted to capture with subtle strokes. There's another peculiar fact about this sculpture. Abraham Lincoln has an ear on the right side, but none on the left. Borglum felt that the incomplete image symbolized the unfinished life of the assassinated president. There's another sculpture of Lincoln without a left ear, also created by Borglum, but on a scale to rival the works of the ancient Egyptians. This is Mount Rushmore, once an undistinguished peak in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Beginning in 1927 and continuing for 14 years, sculptor Gutzen Borglum labored to create his masterpiece. Now, over 40 years after it was finished, it is preserved and protected by the National Park Service. Maintenance men regularly take inspection tours to locate and patch the cracks created by the passage of time. Every year, they climb down the craggy countenances of Lincoln, Washington, Jefferson, and Teddy Roosevelt. It is a safe but dizzying ride. Each face gets a thorough going over. All cracks must be patched. Otherwise, water could seep in, and through natural expansion and contraction, eventually destroy what the artist created. A mixture of linseed oil, white lead, and powdered granite, the paste is the same as that used by the original artist. The work is routine. The result, however, underscores the hope of the artist expressed before the work began. "Breathe a prayer," he said, "that these records shall endure until the wind and the rain alone shall wear them away."
In the United States, one city has more psychiatrists per capita than any other. Washington, D.C. Believe it or not.
Hey, sweetie, want to try something different?
In Yokohama, Japan, in 1885, a talented artist named Hananuma Masakichi learned that he was dying of an incurable disease. Realizing that he could never marry the woman he loved, he created this astonishing likeness so that she would have something to remember him by. The statue is composed of 2,000 separate pieces of wood, skillfully melded together without the use of a single nail. He created this startling work by using adjustable mirrors to view himself from every possible angle. The task was not only an act of supreme adoration, but also an agonizing ordeal, for the hair was Masakichi's own, plucked from his body strand by strand and inserted painstakingly into tiny holes. It's even believed that he pulled out his own fingernails, toenails, and teeth to complete the sculpture. Was Masakichi completely mad to create such a gift for the woman he adored? Or just hopelessly in love? Considering the things we do to win the objects of our affection, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. In rural Ireland, what some people do for love is to join the Festival of Bachelors that each year expands the population of Lisdoonvarna from 500 to almost 20,000. For the month of September, a 100-year-old matchmaking tradition is revived. Social activities are virtually non-stop, as eligible singles let it be known that they have come not just to dance, but to find a marriage partner. They make no secret of their intentions.
We're all looking for a husband. Hopefully.
I'm down here looking for a woman. Over here.
Now famous for the festival, the village once was acclaimed for its mineral waters. Old-timers drink it for their health. Newcomers prefer coffee and conversation and the opportunity to sound out potential partners on the dance floor. Changing partners is not only expected, it is encouraged. With each new dance, there is a new face and the chance to find what most have come for. The beginning that could lead to a happy ending. Getting married in the small French village of Villefranche sometimes involves more than simply saying, "I do." To tie the knot often requires two ceremonies, one church and one civil, and the endurance to survive almost 24 hours of dining, drinking, and dancing. For the groom, tradition demands that he say goodbye to being a bachelor with a kiss. The tradition also demands not one, but 3 kisses. A similar custom is required of the bride. She, however, has difficulty in keeping the limit to 3. The bride and groom don't have to stay for the last dance. At dawn, however, they do have to submit to one last gesture of goodwill in the form of a rude awakening. As a way to wish them luck, a chamber pot has been filled with a potion of disgusting appearance. Among other things, it contains a mixture of chocolate and champagne. To show the world they are truly married, the celebration moves outside to come to an unceremonious end. The marathon is over, and the marriage is about to begin. In India, marriage as a commitment to a permanent relationship is honored by a religious ritual called Shastiyabda Purti. For a married man on his 60th birthday, the ceremony blesses the reaffirmation of his wedding vows to his wife. The occasion involves prayers of thanksgiving. The symbolic handling of fire is a way for the couple's children to pay respects to the god Ayushe, patron of long life. In a baptism designed to assure continued good health, ordinary water becomes a powerful potion. The faithful believe that water touched by gold can wash away bodily ills. There is only a small piece of gold in the urn, but it is enough to bless the intentions of those who perform the ritual. Painted with the colors of youth, the feet of the bride are decorated just as they were years ago in the original ceremony. The groom also repeats the rituals of the past. A symbolic oil on his stomach, a mark on the forehead to distinguish his social status. In their youth, an exchange of garlands marked their engagement. In repeating the gesture, they honor the early budding of their romance, the courtship that led to that first exchange of vows. More than a quarter of a century ago, a simple but sacred thread sealed their marriage. She still wears the original, securely tied around her neck as an inexpensive reminder of those youthful vows. Now it will be joined by another, this time studded with gems and just as securely tied.
The knot is a symbol of marriage in almost every country, every culture throughout the world. Here in Japan, these knotted ropes commemorate one of the oldest wedding anniversaries on earth, a union that proved abundantly fruitful. Long, long ago, the story goes, two spirits, male and female, were sent from heaven to an earth which was still chaotic and without form. This place, now part of Japan's Ise-shima National Park, may be the very spot they came to, and the place where they married. Myoto Iwa, the married rocks. The large one represents Izanagi, the male spirit, the other Izanami, his bride. Between them, the 115-foot-long knotted ropes symbolize their marriage. A marriage that gave birth not only to children, but to mountain ranges, rivers, forests, in fact, the entire country of Japan. Courtship and marriage are universal, but sometimes they take forms which can perhaps be best described as unexpected. Believe it or not. At weddings in Borneo, a human skull was once part of the ceremony to symbolize that love outlasted death. Believe it or not. MST3K.
The desolate part of the Tehachapi Mountains in California is too rugged for extensive agriculture. The soil is poor, the land rocky, the rainfall sparse. And yet,
This is the site of a remarkable kind of farm. Its crop is invisible, but so precious, it is potentially worth millions of dollars. This is a wind farm, and these spinning blades are designed to literally harvest the energy of the wind. Though the technology is highly sophisticated, the concept is simple enough. A good stiff breeze comes down out of the mountains and turns propellers like these, which are attached to turbines that generate electricity. Wind. An ancient solution to a modern problem. Putting the wind to work on this New England island, however, took some doing. Tugboats had to cross 14 miles of ocean to deliver the complicated parts of a technological puzzle. When it was assembled, it would become a wind-powered generator. The problem was that nobody on the island knew exactly how to put it together. It had been accepted, sight unseen, as part of an experiment. If they could get it assembled, the 50 residents of Cuttyhunk Island would have a permanent source for inexpensive electrical power. The wind was free, and so was the machinery. The giant windmill blades and everything else, except installation, were provided without charge. The wind turbine generator was a prototype, and the manufacturer wanted to give it a trial run under actual field conditions. The designer came to the island to supervise the final steps of the assembly process.
How you guys doing? Is it hard?
Upon completion, it would be one of the largest windmills in the world. The mounting of the blades was a delicate and dangerous procedure.
Hold it, what's going on now?
This the block's just creaking.
Hold
It's on! Hey, it worked! All right!
In the end, a local three-man crew had mounted over 20 tons of machinery on top of the 80-foot tower. They had no previous experience in installing wind generators, but they were determined to solve the puzzle. And did. Wind power. It's an old idea, but today it drives new machinery. This unusual vehicle can cruise at over 55 miles an hour. It is powered by the wind. The arch on top is a sail. It was built here in Ann Arbor, Michigan by James L. Amick.
As an aeronautical engineer, I wanted to apply what we know about aeronautics to this highway vehicle. Essentially, it's an electric car, but it also has this large sail, which allows the wind to propel it under favorable conditions.
As it sails along, a generator recharges batteries that propel the vehicle when the wind dies. A lull in the wind, however, is no problem in Australia. Here, it is the sun that provides the energy for another experimental vehicle. To prove the practicality of solar power, a group of Australian adventurers and engineers designed a lightweight vehicle, topped it off with a panel of 720 solar collecting cells, and set out to cross the Australian continent. Accompanied by mechanics in support vehicles, they had 2,566 miles to go. By maintaining average speeds of 15 miles an hour, even with occasional breakdowns, the team hoped to make the crossing in less than 4 weeks. Except for natural obstacles, The vehicle met with few other delays. Even while crossing the rugged mountains of the continent's great dividing range, the sun pushed the car up steep grades with the greatest of ease. Powered by batteries charged by the sun, the car sometimes reached speeds of over 35 miles an hour. For the solar car to journey over 2,500 miles, it took only 20 days. Fuel consumption was zero, and there was plenty of sunlight left. In California, where bleached bones testify to the power of the sun, the desert has been dug up and planted with a crop of steel. Called Solar One, 130 acres of barren desert have been transformed into a sprawling solar furnace. To collect the heat of the sun and convert it into energy, huge mirrors mounted on remote-controlled devices focus the sun's constantly changing reflection onto a central tower. The resulting heat on the tower is intense. It is the center point in a circle of 1,818 highly polished mirrors. Called heliostats, the mirrors are controlled by computers to keep them on target. The heat is used to create steam, which, in turn, drives an electric generator. By converting sunlight to electrical power, Solar One creates enough energy to power about 2,500 homes.
Sunshine. It can give you more than a tan. A miniature solar panel like this is like having an extension cord plugged into the sun that you can take with you anywhere you go. The toys will keep moving as long as the light shines on them, and inventors are working on a lot of ways to utilize the energy that is available anywhere under the sun. This calculator operates totally on solar energy, no batteries. And the little solar cell in this wristwatch lets the sun recharge the battery. But some of the inventions are a bit unusual. This cap, for example, serves a dual purpose. A solar panel is here to power the radio built inside. And when you put it on, keeps the sun off your nose and puts music in your ear. Sunshine, the only energy source in the world that we can never use up. Believe it or not.
Suppose I were to bet you that I could take this single strip of paper and cut it in one continuous straight line so that I ended up with two separate loops joined together like links in a chain. Would you say possible or impossible? Let's find out. First, make a loop. Not like this, but like this, with a half twist. A single loop stuck together with tape. Now, make a starting cut and proceed all the way around in one continuous straight cut. It's going to take a little longer than you think because you don't end up where you started, and not the first time around. You have to go around twice, still in a straight line, to get back to where you began. One continuous cut, but two separate loops. Possible or impossible? Possible. Believe it or not.
wonder begins tonight with 4 hours of terrifying tales. First, an eerie creature haunts Chicago's upper class on Kolchak the Night Stalker. Then, a daring reporter uncovers the truth behind a mysterious weir cult in The Howling. And an ancient amulet resurrects an evil World War II general on Friday the 13th, the series. Prepare for the scares. Enter the dimension of